It started with a balance alert. Your $312,000 disbursement has been processed. Except I hadn't requested one. I was standing in the kitchen, still in my pajamas, pouring coffee into my favorite This Might Be Wine mug. The text blinked across the screen like a mosquito I wanted to swat away. But something about it stuck. Disbursement? I stared at the number. $312,489.37. Gone. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly, I was on the floor. Coffee sloshed onto the tiles, hands shaking. I hadn't touched that account in years, not since Mark and I had agreed it was our safety net, the thing we wouldn't mess with until retirement. 27 years of marriage, 2 grown kids, and a rule. We don't touch the fund. So why was it suddenly empty? Within seconds, I was logged in. My password still worked. But the statement history told a different story. Mark had initiated the transfer 3 days ago, signed the digital authorization, even called the representative to confirm it. That account was in my name, sole ownership. But somewhere, somehow, he had gotten access. My first thought wasn't rage. It was, where is he? And the answer was simple. In Dallas. At a conference. The same one he'd gone to for the past 4 years. The one he said helped him network with the next generation of consultants. The one he always came home from, reeking of hotel soap and cheap ambition. I knew what I had to do. But first I needed to stop crying. You don't stay married to someone for 27 years without learning how they lie. Mark was never sloppy. He didn't fumble his words or avoid eye contact. No, Mark lied with ease, with confidence, with spreadsheets and bullet points. He'd always said I had a suspicious mind, like it was a flaw, not a survival instinct. But I wasn't suspicious. I was observant. And now, I was furious. While he was in Dallas, I was in our guest room with a yellow legal pad and a bottle of Cabernet I'd been saving for our anniversary. The irony. I started listing every odd thing from the past 6 months. The sudden insistence on updating our financial strategy. That awkward conversation about moving funds around for tax reasons. The life insurance policy I never signed but he said he'd handle. And the new password he set on the computer we used together. It wasn't just the 401k. I could feel it. This was bigger. And I was done waiting for another shoe to drop. The next morning, I made an appointment with a forensic accountant. Her name was Elaine. Mid-50s, whip-smart, and looked like someone's favorite aunt who could also dismantle a Ponzi scheme in an afternoon. I liked her immediately. "You're not crazy," she said after skimming the bank statements I'd brought. "This has been happening for a while." She flipped to a page I hadn't noticed. Mark had taken out a home equity line of credit, in my name, signed using a scanned version of my signature. Forgery. He was either desperate or reckless, or both, and that was good. Desperate men make mistakes. I booked a last-minute flight to Dallas, under my maiden name. Mark always joked that I never changed it on my passport because I liked to keep one foot out the door. Turns out, that little foot just bought me some freedom. Elaine had given me enough information to start a paper trail. What I needed now was proof. Physical, emotional, undeniable proof. So I showed up at the Hotel Lorette, the sleek high-rise Mark always bragged about. Great for client dinners, babe, 5-star everything. I walked in through the valet entrance and made a beeline to the front desk. "Hi, I'm looking for my husband. He's staying here. I think he may have lost his phone and I need to drop something off for him." I kept my voice sweet, soft, just frantic enough to sound loving. The clerk looked hesitant. "What's the name?" "Mark Witherspoon." Click, click, click. "He's in the penthouse suite, Ms. Kavanaugh," I said, smiling. My maiden name slid off my tongue like silk. Claire Kavanaugh. He handed me a key card. "Want me to call up first?" "No," I said. "I want to surprise him." And, oh, I did. I walked the long hallway to the elevator like I was heading to a firing squad. My stomach churned, but my grip was steady. My whole life was split into 2 parts. Before this moment, and after. The elevator opened directly to the suite. And there they were. Mark, in a robe, and a woman in her mid-20s brunette, dripping in gold jewelry and arrogance, lounging on the velvet sofa, sipping a mimosa like it was her retirement she'd just stolen. "Claire?" Mark froze, the blood draining from his face. "Well, darling." I let the door swing shut behind me. "You forgot to invite me to the financial planning party." The girl blinked. Who is she? I smiled. I'm the woman who funded this little vacation. Mark scrambled to his feet, face ashen, stammering something about misunderstandings and timing, and how this isn't what it looks like. He always underestimated how calm I could be in a storm. It terrified him more than yelling ever did. "Oh, I'm not here to fight," I said, glancing around the suite. "I just came to take inventory." The girl who looked barely older than our daughter stood up, folding her arms across her silk robe. "Are you seriously crashing his work trip?" "Sweetheart," I said, turning to her, "he used my retirement to book this room. You're sipping my funds right now." Mark stepped in. "Claire, can we talk? Alone?" I looked at him, really looked at him, hair thinner, gut thicker, face pleading, like a man watching the noose tighten. "No need. You've said enough." "Actually," I said, pulling a small device from my coat pocket, "you'll be happy to know I recorded your little welcome party. The audio's crisp. Might even make a fun addition to the court file." His mouth dropped. "And since you forged my name to take out a loan against the house, accessed my retirement without consent," and I glanced at the girl, "lied to what I assume is your financial intern, I'd say we're well past talking." I turned to leave. Mark grabbed my arm. "Claire, don't do this, we can fix it." I looked at his hand, then back up at him. "You fixed it when you transferred the money. I just had to collect the receipt." I slipped free and walked back toward the elevator. "Oh," I added over my shoulder, "your laptop at home. I copied your hard drive. My forensic accountant is having a field day. Sleep well." The doors closed. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I had never been more certain of my next steps. Back in Atlanta, I wasted no time. First stop, Elaine's office, where I handed her a flash drive labeled Mark's Greatest Hits, email threads, financial records, photos, even a few invoices he'd forgotten to delete, massage appointments billed to a consulting client, dinners for two charged as team building. Elaine whistled. "He's sloppy." "This is gold." Then came the divorce attorney, Marissa, recommended by a friend who'd said, "She's like a scalpel. Quiet, sharp, leaves no mess. My kind of woman." Marissa listened as I explained everything. She didn't blink once. "When he accessed your 401k, was it through a shared account?" "No," I said. "It was mine. Solo." She smiled. "Good. We'll be pressing criminal charges for financial fraud. Can I also get the house?" "Oh, honey," she said. "You'll get the house, the boat, and probably the monogrammed golf towels." I left that office with a file folder thicker than a Bible and a battle plan worthy of a general. But what I felt most of all? Relief. I was no longer trying to save anything. I was building something new with concrete and truth instead of the sandcastle Mark had molded for me. The next day I froze all joint accounts, changed the locks, and left a neat envelope taped to the front door. Inside was a note. "Mark, you always said I had a suspicious mind. Turns out, it's a brilliant one too. You can forward my mail to Marissa's office. P.S. The house cameras recorded everything, even the midnight phone calls. Sleep tight, Claire." The fallout didn't stay quiet for long. See, Mark was something of a local star. That nice financial advisor with the lake house, the guy who coached Little League and chaired the Chamber of Commerce's Economic Committee. He played the part so well, most people never looked past the golf polos and dad jokes. But people talk. Especially when a well-respected woman files for divorce citing financial fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of funds, and backs it up with tangible, indisputable evidence. Marissa made sure the filings were airtight. She also made sure the press got wind of it just enough. Not a scandal, a cautionary tale. The local paper ran a story titled, "Respected Financial Advisor Faces Allegations of Fraud in Surprise Divorce Filing." The comments section lit up like a Christmas tree. I always thought he was too slick. Claire was the brains behind that family anyway. You never really know people. The best part? Elaine uncovered another little gift. Apparently, Mark had been borrowing from a few of his longtime clients, siphoning off small amounts from discretionary accounts. Just enough that most wouldn't notice right away. But one did. A widow named Joyce, whose daughter happened to work in compliance at a bank downtown. Within 72 hours, Joyce's lawyer contacted Marissa. We had a domino effect. And Mark? He had no idea how fast the house of cards was falling. He was too busy trying to get back into the suite at Hotel Lorette. The card had been declined. The girl, she'd posted a TikTok titled POV, "Your sugar daddy is actually broke." I watched it 3 times. 3 weeks later, Mark got served. At his new address, a rental apartment 2 towns over, sandwiched between a tire shop and a check cashing place. The process server didn't even knock, just slid the thick envelope across the counter of the vape store, where Mark had started picking up his mail. Inside, the formal divorce filing, the civil fraud suit, and a friendly note from Marissa. "We recommend you retain counsel." Quickly. To his credit, Mark tried to play it cool. He called me. Once. "Claire," he said, his voice the same soft, patronizing tone he'd used the time he bought a boat without asking. "We don't have to make this ugly. We can work something out. Privately." I let the silence sit for a second before answering. "Mark, you made this ugly when you forged my signature and stole my retirement. Privately." Click. I blocked his number. But that didn't stop his sister Colleen from calling. Colleen, who once told me I was lucky to land a man like Mark. Now she was singing a different tune. "Claire, I had no idea," she whispered. "He said you just lost it. That you were unstable." "Of course he did. He also said the account was in both your names." "Nope," I said. "Want to see the statement?" Long pause. "I believe you," she finally admitted. "Everyone does now. Even Mom." I didn't take comfort in it. Not really. But it was interesting how quickly people shifted when the truth was undeniable. Like watching rats scurry when someone flips on the lights. And baby, I was the electricity. The town's annual Women in Business luncheon was the kind of thing I used to avoid. Too many polite smiles, too many men in golf shirts pretending to support us, too many wives playing small while their husbands took up all the space. But this year, I RSVP'd with a bold check mark and bought a new navy sheath dress that said, "I know exactly what I'm doing, and I dare you to underestimate me." The theme was financial independence after 50. Poetic. I was the closing speaker, a last-minute replacement after the original guest mysteriously had a scheduling conflict. Translation: didn't want to follow a woman whose divorce story was now small-town legend. I stood at the podium, took a sip of water, and smiled at the sea of pearls and power suits. "I used to think financial independence meant saving for retirement," I began. "But now I know it means understanding where your money is, who can access it, and what your signature is worth." The room was silent. I'm here today because I made the mistake of trusting someone who told me we were a team, that we were planning for a future together. And while I worked, and saved, and built, he spent, behind my back, with my name. Gasps. One woman actually dropped her fork. I smiled. And now? He's bankrupt, under investigation. And I'm launching a nonprofit to help women get the financial education we're so often denied. Starting right here, in this county. Thunderous applause. Afterward, women lined up to talk. A teacher, a nurse, a woman who'd been quietly funneling $20 a week into a hidden envelope in her sock drawer. "You just told my story," one whispered. "Except I haven't gotten out." "Not yet." "You will," I told her. "Start by knowing what's yours." The foreclosure notice went up on the lake house in mid-October. I didn't even know he'd tried to keep it. I assumed he'd sold it to cover his legal fees. But nope. Mark had been stringing along some fantasy that he could win me back, reclaim his reputation, and keep the house he bought with money that wasn't his. When the sheriff's tape went up, I got a photo from our old neighbor Ruth. "Thought you'd want to see this." He tried to stop them, but they had the court order. In the picture, Mark stood in a wrinkled polo shirt and mismatched loafers, arms crossed, lips tight. The man who once held weekend barbecues like he was king of the cul-de-sac now looked like a lost child who didn't understand the rules of a game he'd invented. 3 days later, the yacht went. Not a big one, just a 26-footer he kept docked and called Clairvoyant, which I now saw as a cruel little joke. But it was registered under the LLC he'd created using funds from my portfolio. So Marissa had that seized too. My favorite part? His girlfriend, the one from the hotel, posted a TikTok from inside a pawn shop, selling the last of the designer purses he'd bought her. Caption: when your man says he's an investor but can't invest in rent. The comments were brutal. I didn't engage. I didn't need to. The world was watching him fall apart, and I was busy building something new. I'd been accepted into a financial empowerment fellowship for women over 50. The nonprofit was already forming, and Elaine had agreed to serve on the board. I was hosting our first workshop at the public library in 3 weeks. The next week came. The letter in a battered white envelope with no return address, just my name and our old address, scrawled in his uneven handwriting. I knew it was from Mark before I even opened it. Inside was a single sheet of yellow legal pad paper. No greeting, no apology, just desperation dressed up as nostalgia. Claire, I know things got out of hand, but we were a team once. You and me. You can't just erase that. I lost everything. But maybe that's what we needed, a clean slate. Maybe we both made mistakes. I think we should talk. Not with lawyers, just us. Remember the lake? Remember your laugh? If there's any part of you that still believes in what we had, meet me at the old spot Sunday at 5. No games. Just talk. I read it twice. Then once more. Not for sentiment, but to look for hidden angles. Because I no longer saw Mark as a husband or even an ex. I saw him as what he truly was, a manipulator with nothing left to leverage but nostalgia. I showed the letter to Marissa and Elaine. We had a quiet little meeting in Elaine's office over coffee. He's testing boundaries, Elaine said. He wants to see if you'll crack. Marissa nodded. But we can use this. So we made a plan. Sunday at 5, I showed up but not alone. I brought a court-appointed mediator, a recorder and a witness, all approved by the judge. All legal, and all completely documented. Mark was already there, sitting on a bench by the lake in a windbreaker, and loafers like some sad suburban Gatsby waiting for a green light that was never his to begin with. His face fell when he saw me walk up with a briefcase and backup. "This isn't what I meant," he muttered. "No," I said calmly, setting down the paperwork. "But this is what you built, and now? This is what it's worth." We handed him the final settlement terms. No assets, no alimony, and a court date for the criminal charges tied to his unauthorized financial activity. "You're lucky you're not in jail," I added. Yet, he didn't speak, just looked out at the lake, at the ducks, at the past. I turned and walked away. And I swear, the air smelled sweeter with every step. You know what surprised me most? It wasn't how relieved I felt once the dust settled. It was how light I felt. No more waiting for the other shoe to drop. No more second-guessing myself or swallowing doubt just to keep the peace. No more walking on eggshells around a man who wore betrayal like cologne, something he applied every morning without a second thought. The house was mine, in full, thanks to Elaine's work and a stack of rock-solid documentation. The judge declared the home, my non-marital asset, immune to any of Mark's greedy reach. He had signed off on that years ago, when he thought prenuptial agreements were just formality. I repainted the kitchen, I planted sunflowers out front, I took his framed golf tournament photos to the donation center, and replaced them with photos of my kids, my girlfriends, my dog, and a new diploma I'd earned through the online business finance course I finished last month. The nonprofit officially launched under the name Clear Ledger. Yes, the pun was intentional. Our tagline, for women who refuse to be kept in the dark financially or otherwise. We hosted our first seminar that Saturday. 30 women showed up. I cried in the parking lot afterward, not out of sadness, but because for the first time in decades, I knew exactly who I was when I stood alone. Claire Kavanaugh, mother, strategist, survivor, and the woman who turned betrayal into a blueprint. Mark tried to reinvent himself, of course. They always do. A few months after the settlement, I heard he started driving for a luxury rideshare service in Buckhead, wearing a blazer, calling himself a consultant between ventures. One of my girlfriends spotted him picking up a couple outside the Ritz and texted me, "Claire." He opened the car door like he was auditioning for Downton Abbey. He still had that need to perform, to seem important, to cling to status even when the world had long since moved on without him. His girlfriend? Gone. The TikTok fame fizzled the moment the money ran out. Last I heard, she moved back to Tampa and got engaged to a chiropractor. His family stopped calling. Not out of loyalty to me, but because scandal is bad for cocktail parties. Colleen sent a half-hearted email apologizing for everything, and I let it go unanswered. Mark eventually tried to contact our kids, Of course he did. But they knew the truth. They'd seen the documents, the emails, the blank check of my trust that he'd cashed without shame. He'd become the cautionary tale I never wanted them to witness, but maybe they needed to. My daughter told me over coffee, "Mom, I used to think strength meant keeping everything together, but now I see it means knowing when to walk away and let the pieces fall." She gets that from me. The morning everything became final, the divorce decree stamped, the fraud charges settled, the last of the settlements wired to my account, I stood in the mirror, wrapped in a towel, and just looked at myself. Not with judgment, not scanning for flaws, just looking. There she was, the woman I'd become. My hair had more silver in it now. My hips had softened. There were fine lines around my mouth that told the truth about laughter and late nights, and one too many glasses of Merlot with girlfriends who pulled me back from the edge. And yet, I felt beautiful, not in spite of what I'd been through. Because of it. That mirror had seen me cry, scream, whisper prayers, and paste on smiles I didn't feel. And now it saw something different. Peace. No more lies being whispered behind my back. No more checking the joint bank account with dread. No more shrinking to make someone else feel big. I put on lipstick. My favorite shade spiced rose. The kind that says, "I know exactly what I'm worth and you can't afford it." Then I got in my car and drove to the little boutique cafe down the road. The one I used to pass on my way to pick up dry cleaning or Mark's prescriptions. Today, I wasn't running errands for anyone but myself. I ordered a cappuccino and opened my laptop. A new email came in. Subject line, "Speaking Opportunity, Women's Wealth Summit 2025. I smiled. The world was finally catching up to the truth I'd known for months. It happened on a Tuesday. I was at the Clear Ledger office prepping for a workshop on spotting financial red flags in relationships when I saw his name pop up in my inbox. Subject line, "Request for professional reference," from Mark Witherspoon. At first I thought it was spam, some scammer using his name. But no, it was him. Full signature, new email address, and a LinkedIn profile that read like a stand-up routine. Experienced wealth consultant, specializing in high-stakes portfolio management. I laughed out loud. Attached was a form. A standard reference check for a job at a boutique investment firm in Charlotte. Apparently, Mark had applied for a role managing other people's retirements. My lawyer would have advised me to ignore it, but I'm a woman of principle, so I responded. Brief, professional, factual. To whom it may concern, I can confirm that Mr. Witherspoon and I were previously married. During that time, I entrusted him with access to our finances. Unfortunately, he misused that trust, resulting in legal proceedings that are a matter of public record. While I wish him well in future endeavors, I cannot, in good conscience, provide a positive reference. Sincerely, Claire Kavanaugh. I never heard back from the firm, but a week later his LinkedIn profile vanished, his social media went quiet, and a mutual acquaintance mentioned seeing him at a strip mall tax office, handing out flyers for free portfolio reviews. The man who once joked I wasn't built for finance was now hustling strangers in parking lots. And me? I was getting booked to speak at national conferences on financial recovery after betrayal. I used to think closure came with an apology, that one day Mark would call or write and say, "You were right, I was selfish, I'm sorry." But here's the truth. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from us when we stop waiting for the apology we'll never get. My closure came quietly, not in courtrooms or emails, but in Sunday mornings with strong coffee and no anxiety, in laughter-filled dinners with girlfriends who cheered when I told my story to a sold-out ballroom, in the slow, gentle realization that I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. My nonprofit, Clear Ledger, now has a team of 5. We've helped dozens of women leave financially abusive relationships, reclaim stolen assets, and rewrite the way they talk about money and power. Some days I cry reading their letters. Other days I high-five myself in the mirror, because damn, we're doing something that matters. The life I have now, I built it, brick by brick, after the fire. From the ashes of betrayal and the rubble of a marriage that should have honored me, but instead tried to erase me. Mark used to say I was too careful, too cautious, too closed off. Turns out, I was just careful enough to keep receipts, cautious enough to document every lie, and strong enough to walk away before I lost myself completely.